E.J. Santos had dreamed of America since the days he stood barefoot on the streets of his small Filipino town singing for a few coins. At 16, he never imagined he would actually step off a plane in Los Angeles with nothing but a backpack, a cheap jacket, and a heart full of stubborn hope. His mother walked beside him, carrying a second-hand suitcase that held everything they owned. They had spent years saving for this trip, collecting money from relatives, neighbors, and the tiny earnings E.J. made from singing at seaside markets and local karaoke nights. As they rode from the airport to their rented room in an old building, E.J. stared wide-eyed at the tall buildings and endless traffic. Everything looked unreal, like he had stepped inside a movie. Their room was small, just one bed, a mini fridge, and a cracked window that opened to the sound of sirens, but E.J. felt grateful. He knew many kids back home would never have a chance like this. The next morning his mother woke him early and helped him rehearse his audition song. She smoothed down his wrinkled shirt, kissed his forehead, and told him that this was his moment, that all their sacrifices were worth it. When they arrived at the AGT building, E.J. froze at the sight of the enormous crowd of contestants. Some carried guitars, some wore glamorous outfits, and others talked confidently into cameras. E.J. felt tiny, like he didn't belong. But his mother squeezed his shoulder and told him to breathe. Inside the waiting hall, he listened to singers hitting perfect notes, dancers practicing impossible moves, comedians rehearsing punchlines. E.J. sat quietly in the corner, humming under his breath. A few contestants looked at him curiously, surprised that a skinny boy with shy eyes carried such a calm voice. Hours passed. Cameras moved around, capturing reactions and small interviews. E.J.'s palms grew sweaty. He thought about home, about how he used to sing for tourists near the beach, how people sometimes ignored him like he was invisible. Now he was thousands of miles away, surrounded by strangers, ready to perform in front of the biggest judges he had ever seen on TV. When a staff member finally called his number, E.J. stood up slowly, feeling his knees tremble. He walked toward the stage entrance, hearing the crowd beyond the curtain, and whispered a small prayer. Whatever happened today, he knew he had come further than anyone expected. And as the stage door opened, the bright lights washed over him, and his dreams suddenly felt real. E.J. stepped onto the AGT stage with his heart pounding so loudly he thought the judges might hear it. The lights were blinding, and the audience stretched out in front of him like an endless sea. Simon Cowell watched him with a curious expression, while the other judges smiled gently, noticing how nervous he looked. When Terry Crews announced his name, E.J.'s voice cracked slightly as he introduced himself, explaining in a soft accent that he had traveled from the Philippines and that music helped him support his family. The room felt quiet. People leaned in, feeling the sincerity in his voice. Simon asked him why he chose this song, and E.J. swallowed hard. He said he wanted to show his Father in heaven that he was trying to make him proud. A few gasps spread through the audience, and even Simon's face softened. When the music started, E.J. closed his eyes for a moment. The first note came out shaky, but the second was stronger, and by the third he had found his rhythm. His voice filled the auditorium with a surprising power that didn't match his timid appearance. People in the front row stood up almost instantly, and the energy in the room shifted like a wave crashing forward. Halfway through the song, E.J. hit a high note that echoed across the stage. The audience erupted, cheering even before he finished. Simon leaned forward, eyebrows raised, astonished by the transformation of the quiet boy in front of him. When the final note faded, the room exploded into applause. E.J. felt tears burn in his eyes as he covered his mouth in disbelief. The judges began to speak, Howie praising his courage, Heidi calling his voice magical, Sophia saying he sang with his soul. Finally Simon looked at him and said in a calm but powerful tone, "I did not expect that from you." It felt like the world stopped. E.J.'s legs weakened as all four judges said yes, sending him to the next round. Backstage, he hugged his mother tightly as she cried with pride. That night, the clip of his audition began circulating online, and E.J. didn't even know yet that his life had just changed forever. Episode 3. The days after E.J.'s audition felt like a whirlwind he could barely keep up with. Strangers were suddenly messaging him online, calling him inspiring and telling him that his voice gave them goosebumps. But while the world was starting to notice him, his daily life in America remained anything but glamorous. EJ and his mother continued staying in their tiny rented room, and the bills kept piling up. To help his mother, EJ took evening shifts washing dishes at a small Filipino restaurant a few blocks away. After school hours, he rushed to work, scrubbing plates while humming melodies under his breath to keep himself calm. The steam burned his hands, and his back ached, but he never complained. Every dollar mattered. When he received an email from AGT inviting him to rehearsals for the judge cuts, EJ felt both excited and terrified. The production team paired him with a vocal coach, a strict but kind woman named Melissa. She immediately noticed how EJ sang with emotion but lacked technical control. During their first session, she pushed him to work on breathing, posture, and vocal power. EJ tried his best, but the pressure got to him. As he attempted a difficult verse, his voice cracked badly. He froze, embarrassed and frustrated. Melissa stepped toward him and told him not to panic, that a cracked note wasn't the end of the world. But EJ couldn't shake the fear of disappointing everyone who believed in him. That evening, after rehearsal, EJ walked alone down a busy street, listening to the noise of traffic as tears formed in his eyes. He missed home, missed the laughter of his cousins, missed the smell of the ocean and the comfort of being understood. America was bigger, brighter, louder, but also lonelier. When he returned to the room, his mother noticed his silence. She sat beside him on the bed, took his tired hands, and asked what was wrong. EJ finally broke down and admitted that he was scared of failing, scared of letting the world see him fall apart, scared that his dream wasn't strong enough to survive the weight he carried. His mother cupped his face and reminded him that he had already come further than most people ever dared to imagine. She told him that every challenge he faced was a part of the journey, not a sign to give up. To calm him, she played a voice recording she kept from the day his father heard him sing for the first time. Hearing his father's proud words, "You have a gift, son. A gift worth fighting for," made EJ's tears fall faster, but it also lit something inside him. The next morning, he returned to rehearsal determined. Melissa noticed the change immediately. EJ's voice was still emotional, but now there was strength behind every note. Gradually, his confidence returned. By the end of the week, he stood in front of the mirror, shoulders pushed back, telling himself he was ready for the judge cuts. Even if fear tried to hold him down, he knew he couldn't let it win. The judge cuts arrived faster than EJ expected, and the atmosphere felt completely different from the auditions. The stage looked larger, the lights brighter, and the energy buzzing around him was almost overwhelming. Contestants paced backstage nervously, whispering last-minute prayers or rehearsing lines. EJ kept his hands pressed together as he quietly warmed up his voice, feeling the familiar tightness of nerves in his stomach. When a staff member tapped his shoulder and told him to line up, EJ felt his pulse quicken. But he remembered his mother's encouraging words and took a slow breath. As he walked onto the stage, the judges greeted him warmly. This time, they expected growth, they expected more. The pressure hung heavily in the air. When the music began, EJ closed his eyes and allowed himself to fall into the emotion of the song. It was a ballad he chose carefully, one that told a story of heartbreak and hope. His voice sounded fuller, stronger, more controlled than before. The audience watched in complete silence, absorbing every word. As he reached the chorus, the emotion in his voice rose, filling the studio with a depth that surprised even him. He could feel Simon's eyes locked on him, studying every nuance, every note. The more EJ sang, the more he forgot about the cameras, the judges, and the fear. In that moment, it was just him and the music. When he held the final note, the room erupted into applause. Even the judges stood, clapping with genuine enthusiasm. Backstage, the crew exchanged impressed glances. But the moment of celebration didn't last long. Now came the results. All the contestants gathered together, hands shaking, hearts racing. The judges took their time discussing, and every second felt like an hour. EJ stood between two dancers, fingers interlocked with theirs. He whispered a small prayer, asking for strength. When the judges returned to announce the names moving forward, EJ felt the world closing in. One by one, they called the finalists. His name didn't come at first, and fear wrapped tightly around his chest. But then, finally, Sophia called out, "EJ Santos." The sound of his name almost didn't register. His knees buckled slightly as joy and relief washed over him. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he stepped forward, realizing he had made it to the live shows. Backstage, his mother hugged him so tightly he could barely breathe. In that moment, EJ felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope blooming uncontrollably inside him, telling him that he truly belonged on that stage. In the days leading up to the live shows, EJ felt a different kind of pressure settling over him. The judges had praised him, the audience had cheered for him, and millions of people had watched his audition online. For the first time in his life, people around the world believed in him. But with that sudden attention came a heavy weight. What if he couldn't live up to their expectations? What if his next performance wasn't strong enough? What if he disappointed everyone, including himself? Those questions followed him everywhere, even into his dreams. AGT producers gave him a chance to choose his song for the live show, and after long nights of thinking, EJ finally picked a song dedicated to his father. It wasn't the easiest song, and it wasn't the most predictable choice, but it meant something to him. His father had been the first person who told him he had a gift. Singing for him, even now, felt like singing for a part of himself he couldn't let go of. During rehearsals, EJ struggled with the emotional weight of the lyrics. There were moments when his voice would tremble